Hey, folks, if you're joining us live, it is August the 31st, and we're going to discuss chapter 9 and 10 out of the book. And this, of course, has to do with England after the fall of the Roman Empire, but especially during that time when during and after Charlemagne. Please keep in mind on Google Classroom, I have your Quizlet sets up there, and we are going to quiz this week. Either Wednesday or Thursday. It depends on how tomorrow goes. But be prepared for Wednesday. You're going to do the same thing they do. All right. So, terms on the board are the Anglo-Saxons, the Britons. There's more than one. King Egbert, was it Wessex? I don't remember. All right. Yeah, then Ethelbert, Augustine of Canterbury, not Hippo, and the Synod of Whitby. Because they only called him Augustine in your book, and that's confusing. Because if you remember last year, there was another Augustine, and so if there's one thing about religious people, they like to repeat names because you want to be named, especially. Well, here's the thing. Whenever people would take religious vows to get join priesthood or become a monk, they'll change their name. And usually when you change your name, it's like to some other prior significant person. And so that's why there was just recently a Pope, Benedict the 16th. He was the 16th Benedict Pope. So, yeah. All right. So, hey, wait. So going back, your book doesn't mention this. Remember last year, Britannia was a province of Rome. Romans went there. They built places like the city of London. It was a military camp. People there learned how to speak Latin. But if you remember, I told you during the fall of Rome, archaeologists tell us it was a terrible thing. The people started burying their gold. They stopped, the economy shut down. Skeletons of both humans and their livestock got smaller because there was less nutrition. So it was a bad time. People stopped writing as a traumatic event. Well, now we have the age of Charlemagne, so we're in the 800s. And we're starting to see that during this time period of before, we're having more Germanic people. It's always Germanic people coming from the east, going west. Now they're invading into here. They're taking this land. We're going to talk about the nature of some of these invasions later, because some of these invaders are actually going to be invited to come over. And then when they come over, they're going to be like, we're going to stay. Oops. So don't pay barbarians to come to your land. It's not a good idea. All right. So unless you want them to roll. All right. So Anglo-Saxons are an example of this. So what does your book tell us about them? Yes, sir.
They destroyed many flourishing cities.
Yeah, right. So, they come in as invaders. And they don't only come in as invaders. What does it say that's different about them from other Germanic people? Yeah.
They spared the women and
children. Okay. Well, that's kind of a common feature. Usually whenever people conquer, there's a lot of bloodshed, but the women and children are usually kind of kept as like workers and other stuff. But what about their culture? Does anybody remember what was different from their culture compared to, say, if they were the Goths or something like that? They had never been in contact with ancient Romans. Yeah, so they were completely paganized. They were like old school. So, all right. So, Germanic, like you said, invaders. God bless you. All right. Who destroyed? I like that. They destroyed a lot of that standing civilization because there still was now these communities, they were small. They were like, there were places where people traded and things like that. they didn't have like what you might think of as like a lot of stone buildings and stuff. If you made it to the Blue Book in Latin, there were still some villas like that was in your Latin Blue Book. Like, what's the name of that guy who owned the villa in the Latin Blue Book? Do y'all remember? Hercules?
No,
Not the Red Book. Not the Red Book.
Frank.
I forgot the name because he was a Briton Roman. Remember that was the story was they were in England. He had the villa. Gosh, I don't remember. So Germanic invaders, they destroyed essentially what was left of the villages. And what I like about the map here, it shows that they kind of run off and they stay. They stay. That's important. They stay. They run off. Who do they run off?
Yeah.
The Britons, yeah. So the Britons used to be, they were Celtic / Romanized. So what I'm saying here is like a lot of them adopted Christianity. A lot of them adopted the Roman lifestyle and spoke Latin and all that good stuff, right? So they liked civilization. They were used to it. It's safer. It's safer for you and your families, but they're pushed out. What does it say? English people. Pushed out. And yeah, your book's correct that they're going to be the ones who are going to become like in the western part there, Wales. The ones in the north going to take over. And see up north it says the Picts. The Picts were like hardcore Celtic barbarians, and they are never going to really be conquered by these people because at this time they're like hardcore like fight to the death barbarians. They had guys who were kind of like berserkers, but they didn't call them berserkers. They would just go crazy in battle and stuff. They didn't care if they got chopped to pieces and stuff. Right? So they were like, we're going to stay out of that place. But the thing is about the Picts is they were so barbaric. They were still almost in the Stone Age. Like they barely even had bronze working or anything like that. So they didn't have anything like villages. People just kind of lived off in the woods with little small farms, and some of them were hunter and gatherers and stuff. So they were really, really, really back in the day over there. So, Egbert. So
Did he like eggs?
maybe he was. All right. So king of. All right. So we're going to say king of some of England, not all of it, right? Because like kings back then, England is not a unified country. It's going to be a whole bunch of small kingdoms, and eventually it's going to get united. Some of England, and yeah, we're going to call it Wessex. And that's eventually basically going to become like a state or a county, you think of it. And so who was he a friend of before he did this? He was a buddy with Charlemagne, yeah. Buddy is Charlemagne. That's right. So he's a friend of Charlemagne. So he's kind of bringing some of this idea of monarchy back and some stability. So here we're having like, because before this you had people who had relied on for centuries Roman protection. Roman soldiers went away. They never really unified after that. They're being attacked by barbarians. Eventually, you're going to have a king come in to some of it and stabilize some of it. However, the following kings after him are going to have a hard time keeping it together because you're going to have other little kings, and they're always going to be at war trying to figure out who's the big king. And that's one of the problems that you have whenever you have a society with a bunch of warlords in charge. Like Japan's going to have a problem with this. Germany's going to have problems with that. A lot of places have problems when you have strong warlord guys who think they're like little kings, always fighting one another. All right, so Ethelbert, he did something big that's going to still be in England today. He's going to help them become free.
United.
Okay. He's going to invite some people. He's going to be a pagan. He's going to invite some people. And he's going to become a Christian. Yeah. So, yeah, because he married, what was her name? Bertha or something like that? Bertha. Yeah, that's a very attractive name. So, all right. So we're going to say pagan king with Christian wife. Invites missionaries and converts. Oh, there you go. So he's going to help re-Christianize, because after Romans go away, a lot of these people start going back into their old pagan practices where they're like, everything fell apart. Maybe we need to go back to the old ways. They start worshiping their idols again and Woden worship and, like Thor and all that stuff. Start doing sacrifices. They start doing what was called white witchcraft and stuff like that. And so Ethelbert is going to help them move back away from that, because the thing is, we're going to find later, like with like Odin and Thor worshippers and stuff, is they're really big into child sacrifice, and so kind of like old Baal worshippers were back in around ancient Israel and stuff like that. And so like a lot of people were pretty disturbed by that. So Augustine of Canterbury. So Augustine comes in, and who does he bring with him?
A person.
Some very important people. You should probably know that.
A group of people.
I feel like mom.
Yeah. So he's going to come in to Ethelbert's court, and he's going to be sent by. This guy's kind of important later. We'll talk about him more later. Sent by Gregory the Great. And we're going to talk more about Gregory the Great later, because he's going to be one of those medieval guys who's going to be a very important person. Sent by Gregory the Great with 40 monks to essentially Christianize. I about that. And England. So not all of England. Remember, a lot of this is going to be centric around the villages that are being rebuilt. Now, there was Christianity in the area. Who was still Christian despite all the barbarians and the fall of Rome and stuff like that?
The Christians.
Yeah, but what country? It wasn't England. It was to the left. Who's to the west of England? It's an island called
Ireland.
Ireland. So, yeah, so here's the thing. Here's what's weird. And it's a really strange thing. So, England falls apart after the fall of Rome. People become essentially illiterate again, all this other stuff. But in Ireland, this little place that had a lot of paganism and stuff like that, totally cut off from Europe, is going to have a guy called St. Patrick going. And Patrick comes in, he Christianizes the area, he smashes pagan idols, all this stuff, and he sets up essentially schools where they're going to preserve literacy and books and Christian teaching, even though they're cut off from the rest of Europe for hundreds of years. And they're also going to have their own monks and stuff like that.
And so whenever Christians from Rome come back to England, they're gonna link up with these guys in Ireland and be like, they have some disagreements. Like they disagree on how the calendar works, like when you calculate Easter. Irish priests would have families, whereas Roman priests around this time stopped marrying. And there's reasons why Roman priests stopped marrying. Part of it had to do with some of them didn't make any money, so their kids would have starved. And the other was what they would do is, since they had families, they wound up taking a lot of church donations to help their family instead of helping out for church. And so the Roman Church kind of got done away with it because something about Paul said it'd be better if you don't, or something like that. Families. So there's some reasons. They had some reasons. So they had some disagreements on those things. Then they have a synod. A synod is like a meeting, right? It's kind of like a really official church meeting. I was just reading a few years, sometimes churches have synods on very big political issues, like whether they're going to recognize something or not, or condemn something, right? Christian churches of all denominations have synods here and there. It's just their leaders get together and talk about stuff. So the Synod of Whitby was between what two groups? I kind of just said it. Between
Ireland and England?
the Irish and the Roman. Yeah.
Oh,
So between
is that right?
Irish and Roman Christians. And basically over saying, over who was right. What's cool is it was peaceful. They weren't killing each other. So who was right for England? Who won?
Somebody.
Yeah, but which one stuck around and which one kind of got absorbed by the other?
The Irish.
Yeah, the Irish get absorbed, and the Romans won. Does anybody remember why they said the Romans won?
They're bigger.
Well, the reason is because Catholics say that the Pope is kind of like the successor, the inheritor of Saint Peter. And so since he's the inheritor of Saint Peter, they say back to scriptures that Peter was given the gates of heaven. And so the king was like, well, if he's got the gates of heaven, I'm listening to him. And so the Romans win, and eventually the Irish Christians are going to adopt the ways of the Roman Christians. So the Romans win. You say Romans, Catholic, either way. And so you're going to see that the church and Christianity in Europe is being united. Those old heretical groups, such as the Gnostics, are already gone. The Arians are being absorbed by the Catholics. The Irish Christians are being absorbed by the Catholics. So it's pretty much only Catholic Christians throughout most of Europe, except for places like the Middle East and North Africa, which still had other ancient churches like the Syriac Church and the Coptic Church, and places like that. So that's pretty much that for this chapter. Y'all got any questions? There's some more images. Here, let me show you. I forgot. I meant to show y'all these first. I get distracted when there's another grown up in here. So that was Mr. Carter, by the way. Y'all know that, right?
No.
Yeah? Okay. No?
I thought it was just some random dude.
No, it's not some random guy.
Somewhere you guys talk to me.
That's okay. That's fine. He's nice. Just know he's nice. He's not out to get you. Then you're good. If you have questions for him, you're probably just gonna have to find time before or after school to go talk to him. He's out there in car duty all the time.
Yeah, but as soon as I have to leave the school as soon as school's up.
We'll get lunch. Maybe you can try to talk to him during lunch.
Like you could eat your chicken tendies and go talk to them.
Chicken tenders.
That's right. I live for the tendies.
Oh my God. He said chicken tenders.
Hey, all right. So here's one thing. Remember how I told you ancient Christians would sometimes take names that would make kind of be self-ridicule type names, like the short and the bald and stuff like that. Well, monks would give themselves tonsure. A tonsure is a haircut where you make yourself bald on purpose. The idea was to make yourself kind of ugly so that you would show that humility. They wanted to live a life that was the opposite of vanity, right? They're not trying to live for this world. Huh?
I'd rather go with figure 1 than
Figure 1. Yeah, that's the Roman one. That's the one that's going to stick around. So medieval monks are often going to have tonsure. The Celtic ones, who were the Irish, they just kind of did this weird, like, I don't know. It's like they're
It's like you
Because
shave
they're
down the
Irish.
middle of your head.
They can't do the same thing as the Romans, or else they'll be
Yeah.
Romans.
I mean, honestly, it kind of looks like they got mange or something. It's just like, look at me. I got a disease.
I'm a wizard.
Who is it?
Bald spot in the middle.
That's why wizards wear hats.
I'm a
Well,
wizard.
This is supposed to be a picture of the Synod of Whitby. So essentially, you have the King's Court, and you have different missionaries, in a sense, come up and have a religious debate. They make their case before the elders and the leaders, and then the king had the final say. Remember, ancient kings decided which church the people followed, because where the king went, remember, it was the betraying your king and betraying your church were the same thing to them. Religion and secular rule was the same thing. There was no separation between church and state back then. That's a modern American thing. So, but yeah, pretty much
Behind the hood.
that's the scribe. Yeah,
He's a creepy old man.
Look,
just scribble writing.
This is
It's kind of like
obviously a
he's
court of
taking notes of
wizards.
what's going on.
Obviously
This is
wizards.
his job. He's
That's
the
exactly his
everything
job.
that it said.
He's taking down the notes for what's going on.
I'm not gonna write that fast.
Dude,
He wasn't writing everything. I can guarantee you. Like,
Probably like abbreviate some stuff and like cut some stuff out.
it's kind of, but they skip a lot, because if you ever read notes on things like this, you'll find that it's very sparse. Like one whole day of meeting, he'll just write the gist of it. Be like,
And there's some important things.
This happened,
Yeah.
that happened,
Not gonna write it down, though.
It's Augustine of Canterbury came in and he made a pretty good case about this. Like, he wouldn't write down the whole speech. Sometimes someone will come back after the fact and try to write down the whole speech from memory. And of course, there'd be errors, but people had pretty good memories back then. They weren't distracted by smartphones and chicken tendies and stuff like that. So that's right. They are good. They are good. All right, folks, that's going to end our lecture for today. We're going to come back and have a small one over chapter 11. And tomorrow, I'm going to post a primary source reading for us, dating back from just after the time of Charlemagne. So that's going to do it for today. Thank you.
Actually,